everyone. Welcome to my studio, which is in London. It's underneath a small art space, Ken Art Space, which I run with my husband, the artist Rob Kessler. My studio is down in the basement. You can see the gaps through the glass there. And don't you want to come in? Let's go. So this is my subterranean studio, and it has very little natural light. As you can see, I have to work with electric light. There is a little bit, there is a shaft of light coming through the pavement, which is lovely when the sun shines, and even my plant is growing there. So this is where I work when I'm in London. This is where I do my painting. I've got a hot kiln at the moment just on my bisque. Hopefully they're all okay and no explosions. And this is my other studio in Corfu, which is in contrast with the London where it's very light and airy. It's a really lovely space to work in. It's very simple. I just have some shelves, my table, clay obviously, and lots of tools and my hands. They're my best tools. I would like to talk to you a bit about Maiolica, which is the technique I use and love. It is a technique developed over 500 years ago, a rich historical medium with diverse influences from Italian Renaissance to simple folkwear. It's something which it came from Mesopotamia and went across to Spain and then southern Europe and up to Holland and Britain. And it so happens that my studio in Lambeth now is where the Lambeth potteries were, and there was Maiolica down there, Delft. It was called Delft. So the red terracotta clay, after bisque firing to 1,000 degrees Celsius, is dipped in a tin glaze and then painted with oxides on the raw glaze and fired again to 1,080 degrees Celsius. The tin acts as an opacifier, which gives a cool white surface and shows off the colours at its best. And that's what I really love about it. So I'm going to work on a dog piece, which is inspired from a painting I saw in Germany by Franz Marc. I have made many of these actually, just looking at the picture, and I like to work from memory as well. It's of a dog lying in the snow, and I'm starting with a lump of clay, which I'm going to bash about and try and discover the dog within. Just working from my head. Let's see how it goes. Is that a donkey I can hear in the background? My uncle used to say to me, your cousin is calling you, and I was taken in every single time. So, when I work with the clay, I like to bash the clay first, and really I'm not working like a sculptor of taking pieces of clay and building up the piece that I have in mind. What I'm trying to do is to give it a basic shape and try and extract the essence of the piece from outside of the clay, drawing it out, working solid, allowing the fingers to show the marks of where I'm pressing and pushing the clay and giving it a sort of dimpled surface. And really what attracted me to the painting was also the coloration, because it's got beautiful colours with a cold snow, sort of blues and greens, an element of watercolour which is great with the brush strokes it uses, which I think could work very well with Maiolica. The dog that I'm thinking about, his name is Rossi, and it was Franz Marc's dog. So he obviously had a very close relationship with it, which shows in the painting. He's a very relaxed dog, and he's obviously very fond of it. And I'm going to try to be fond of this one when it finishes. Haunches coming. I can already see that this might be a nice dog in shape anyway, in form, and then hopefully the painting will bring out a character, little perhaps its nature, and perhaps something slightly poetic, I hope. We'll see. Legs and things will come out, and how his face will rest on his legs. He's already a he, so I wonder what his name will be. We shall see. Glasses on, actually. This is hard work. The clay is quite firm, so that it won't be manipulated too easily, and then it just doesn't seem to draw out the bones and the skeleton of the creature, which is sort of hidden underneath somehow. So I have been working on this for about an hour, and I think probably I have to stop quite soon just to step back from it and look at it again, perhaps with fresh eyes tomorrow. I'm not really trying to get an anatomical correct animal. I'm just trying to find the essence of that animal somewhere in the clay. A simplified form, really. And what really strikes me always on the paintings of Franz Marc is that apart from the energetic and colourful brushwork, he has a great tenderness for the animals he paints, which seems to come through. So hopefully this might happen with this one. Might have a character all of its own. I can overdo it sometimes, so it's knowing when to stop is very hard, really. That's the hardest bit, because I want the painting to do the next bit, which is give it its personality. So we shall see how it goes. I'm uncovering it up now after a couple of days so that it dries a little bit slowly. It's very hot here, and I've had to put damp cloth to make sure it doesn't dry too quickly. It's gone a bit hairy, which is mould, but that's okay because it just will burn away in the firing anyway. And I just need to carry on sponging it and then hollowing it out as it's solid. That's very important, otherwise it would blow up in the kiln, really. And also I want to make sure it dries out evenly from underneath as well as from the top. Otherwise you get big cracks on it. It's pretty soft actually, so I'm not going to do too much because I don't want to lose the shape from the top. But I'm using a loop tool which just cuts into the clay and taking some pieces out. I have to be careful not to get through the other side. So all these pieces of clay I'm taking out, I'm going to wedge them together, and some other little creatures will emerge from that. It's not going to be wasted. No clay is wasted whatsoever. And I'm only going to do a little bit more of this because I don't want to lose the modelling from the other side. The clay is too soft. It will have to wait for another day for the next stage. What I'm aiming for is even drying. The studio in Corfu is very airy, and also it's very hot, so things can dry out really quickly. I'm trying to keep it from drying too quickly. The opposite happens in London. I'm trying for things to dry and they take forever, and therefore I have to wait and wait. And sometimes, you know, the deadlines, that makes it quite tricky. Corfu is well known for its wildlife, and it has become quite famous, I guess, through Gerald Darrell and My Family and Other Animals. And often when I come out of my studio, I may see a hare leaping through the olive grove, which is a great joy and an inspiration. I do get inspired by things around me, people and animals as well. I also make vessels by coiling and pinching the clay, creating soft, slightly irregular forms which retain a little of the finger marks on the surface. Inspired by the mummified cats in the British Museum, which I saw many years ago, these vessels often become feline characters when I paint them later. Once the clay has completely dried, it is biscuit fired to 1000 degrees Celsius, so it becomes ceramic, but it's still porous. At this point, it is dipped in the glaze. The tin glaze that I use is a prepared glaze from Podmore's, and I have found it to give the best colour response. I have to make sure it is thoroughly sieved and stirred, and also to make sure I have adequate volume to submerge the piece. Getting the thickness just right is crucial. Too thin and it looks a bit dead, but if it is too thick, it can crawl and the colour start to run and spoils the image. The right consistency varies depending on whether it is a hollow vessel or a thicker modelled form. Getting it right is based on years of experience and a fair share of things going wrong. When the glaze has dried, I draw an initial design very softly with a very soft pencil on the surface of the pot as a guide to where the painting is going to be. So I have applied the glaze to the vessel, and now I'm going to start painting it by mixing glaze, water and oxides, and intermixing oxides to actually get sort of softer hues, or some of it is a little hit and miss, but I enjoy the challenge of mixing things together and perhaps discovering new colours as I go along. Perhaps more like a painter would use paint, although of course the colours will change after the firing, and we shall see what we will get. Over the years I have built up a big collection of oxides like cobalt, copper, ferrous oxides, underglaze colours and stains. I like mixing them up and see what will happen. I'm never completely sure because you can't really judge the percentages, as it were, but sometimes you get some really beautiful results. Other times you get really things bubbling up, or you know, you can get depth of color, you can get texture. Occasionally you get real horrors, but that's a very fantastic color which I love using despite the risk. It's a real opportunity for a painterly exploration, I suppose, which I really like. And it's not quite the same when you're putting one colour on top of another as you would expect. So depth and shading and a watercolour effect comes through sometimes, which is what engages me really. So as you can see, the colours are applied onto the raw glaze, which is quite absorbent and bumpy, and it's really a little bit like watercolour, except that because it's so porous, the brush dries out very quickly and it's hard to have a flow on it. Also, I hope, well, I know really that once it's fired, the colours will fuse together and you will have a smooth finish. So this is the pot I was painting the other day. Came out of the kiln yesterday, I'm quite pleased with the way the colours and the circular motif has worked out. I think I'm not completely satisfied with the oblong square shapes, and I might try, although it isn't very easy, to add some sort of colour onto it and refire and see what happens. That's what I'm planning. These are just a few examples of before and after firing, which show how the colour changes as well as the character of the marks as the glaze melts. I also make dishes using coils, which I flatten and stretch out, pinch out, as well as smaller platters. These have become vehicles for a series of portraits based on faces I have seen on frescoes and paintings and images of contemporary subjects. I really love the paintings of Pisanello, Lucas Cranach, as well as 20th century painters and artists like Klimt and Schiele, Maurice Denis, Frida Kahlo. I really am attracted to their use of colour and their character portrayal. This one is from a series based on Greek myths and goddesses, and this one is Artemis and her hound, the goddess Diana, goddess of hunting. I hope you have enjoyed my journey through the magic of Maiolica. If you would like to know more about Maiolica, there is a very good book by Daphne Carnegie, and you can see more also on my website, and another movie I made last year for an exhibition in Corfu.